Today I'm going to be talking about language. Language is something very important to human existence because it's the way that we can relate to the world that we live in. It's the way that we can communicate with other human beings, but it's also a way to suppress or dominate um, another human being in the sense that language throughout history has been controlled by white male human beings. Therefore, language has been shaped in order to fulfill this white male perspective and ideals. So, if women, doesn't matter the race, and all the other races that are not white are being excluded from this language, then how is it possible for these other cultures and, um, well, the opposite sex to use language in order to express or get into the academic parts of life? Because in modern times there has been movements that empower women and allow them to use their voices so that they can make changes in order to fulfill their needs, and those needs that throughout history haven't been fulfilled or they had been ignored and because of women being this inferior sex that didn't have the knowledge or the intelligence to participate in political and historical issues that shape the world that we live in. So, if history has been controlled by white men, then how is it possible that since history in the Western sense of the word has been controlled by white men, primarily white entitled men from privileged social classes, then we must take like a more critical eye in the sense that some of the Eastern cultures or the African cultures, they had matriarchies. Matriarchies are societies that were primarily controlled by women. They had queens or empresses, or they were just governed by like a committee of women, and they were the ones that had all the power within the society to decide the future of that tribe or whatever group of people it was. And they usually had a female deity, usually represented as Mother Earth or the fertility and all these very important qualities that humans have to have in order to continue life on this planet. So in the in the Western world, we have this dominant male language that subjugates. So in modern times, we have movements that are, well, not necessarily copying matriarchies, but because we now realize, well, some people now realize that men and women actually complement each other and they're just as equally fit to do academic studies or political jobs or things that actually matter in the course of history and not just in like a relationship or reproduction. So if we have like these empowering movements like feminism, we have to take a more critical look into what feminism is doing to the art today. But in order to have a good critical view of these modern representations of women or women's rights or women's just um, artistic view of the world, in order to have this critical view, there also has to be a theory that supports this view. So for this particular example that I'm going to use the materiality of language by Bleich. It's not a theory that is completely difficult to understand, but it is very important to understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to understand what um, the physicality or the embodiment of language in the sense of how it is being represented in certain aspects of society. So if we have modern day artists or singers like FKA Twigs, she is a very empowered woman that transmits this passion for women and their rights and their beauty and all these amazing qualities that women have and not just reproduction. So FKA Twigs has a very unique style and a very unique way of expressing her femininity. And in one particular song that she has, which is called 2 Weeks, in the video, she is transformed into this female deity that represents the deities from the ancient times of matriarchies. So, in this language that she's using through art, it's changing its meaning from being just like this embodiment of fertility and femininity into something that is powerful and it's individual and it's big. It's bigger than life. Because in one part of the video, you can see all of these little dancers, and she is twice the size of all of the dancers. So it's this empowerment to women to use their bodies and use their language and not let men subjugate them. She uses this big headdress in order to represent like this divine being that it's to be a woman. So when we have these women and that are changing the way we think about women in a sense of an artistic perspective, it changes the whole way that we use language in our daily lives. And FKA Twigs is a really good example because she's not only a woman talking about women and our needs and expressing herself throughout also masculine words. I mean, she uses curse words. Curse words were primarily used by men because in the Western sense, a lady shouldn't swear. So she's using words that are not commonly associated with womanhood. So getting back, she's not only a woman, she's also an African descent woman. So it's two parts that were actually being denied access into language by this white male empowered language. So being a woman and being African, well, she's from England, but from African descent, makes her doubly important into this reshaping or the modifying what language in different parts of life allows people to do with it. So she is trying to say in his text, which, if I may quote, it says the materiality of language refers in part to the fact that merely to use language is to participate in social and political relations, which end quote, which was something that women and other cultures were, or other races, let's not call them cultures, other races were denied entry to. So when we have women using language to change the way that we see the world, or the way that we see women, or the way that we see other races, or the way that we see art, is very important because it lets us move forward into this more accepting world. And even though she is kind of appropriating something that is not necessarily her culture because she's English, she is not desensitizing this deity of African cultures. She is using it to represent modern times in the sense that women should go back to having that same seat in in academic or political or artistic or whatever role that women want to play in society. So even though it is pop and it is um, something really commercial, she is in fact changing the way that young women, whatever color their skin is, are using language to describe themselves and describe the world that they live in. So, so language has stopped being this closed tool that white entitled men use to segregate different races or women. It has become a tool that every single man, woman, child in this planet can use in order to make themselves heard and change the way that we are perceived by other people. So if FKA Twigs took this deity and put it on her, it didn't actually it didn't minimize the symbolic the symbolic gesture. So FKA Twigs didn't desensitize or appropriate another culture or rob a deity of its meaning and its significance. It actually brought new meaning into this um, form or deity, so that women feel empowered to use language that before was denied to them, and to feel like you have a part in this world that actually will listen to you and will listen what you have to say. And well, if Blake is writing this in the sense that he's writing it, it means that people are realizing that language and history in almost every single aspect of human life was actually racist and sexist. So if we are now beginning to open up to a new kind of language, a language that includes every single race, every single gender, then we have a much more brighter hope for the future in becoming a world that is more accepting and at least a little bit more culturally diverse than the one that reigned before the 20th century. So I really hope you like this video, and I hope it was something interesting and a good example to emphasize this theory that Blake has throughout his